Okay, assuming that you've gotten your Raspberry Pi and you've gotten the power cable to plug it in, we're initially not going to plug it into an outlet, but we're going to orientate the plug-in end of it to make sure that we don't damage the cable. It can only go in one way, but it's a very small and delicate connection, so we're going to check out its orientation. We're also going to be plugging this into an HDMI so that we can be using our TV monitor. Check it out, and we will also be using a wireless, I don't know what they call them, a dongle, so that we can be using a wireless keyboard and a mouse while we do the setup on this. So again, I won't be plugging this in initially, and right now there is no card in it. We'll be going through next the steps on getting the card set up, and we're assuming that you've gotten your Raspberry Pi with nothing on it, and you're just going to put a new image on the card and boot up the Raspberry Pi for the very first time. There are a lot of different versions out there. We're going to be trying one, and one of the newer ones. I in the past have used Raspbian Jesse with this, but we're going to try one of the newer ones, and we're going to see how it turns out. I'm going to show you in the first stage just the initial setup of this. So here we go. Okay, during our first part of our video, we installed the Raspberry Pi image to our micro SD card, and we installed a lot of different programs in order to be able to do this. So now it's time to plug in our Raspberry Pi and to set up some of the configuration files. So we already plugged in our power cable, but we didn't plug it into the outlet. We'll go ahead and plug in our HDMI cable. Make sure our USB keyboard and mouse dongle is in, dongle or whatever they call it. And then it's time to insert the micro SD card. For this, you'll want to tip your Pi upside down, because there's a little bit of space usually between the case and the board, and if you try to install it with the case upright, there's a good chance that you will just slide your micro SD card in between the board and the case, and it'll just fall in there, and then you'll have to take the case apart in order to get to the card. So to alleviate that, we'll tip it upside down. Then with the printed side of our micro SD card upward, we will slide it in, and then as you get it in, you should be able to wiggle just slightly, not too much, wiggle slightly to make sure that it's actually going into the slot, and then push it all the way in. Now that it's all the way in, we can put it right side up. And plug in our Ethernet cable. With everything plugged in, now we'll go ahead and power up our Raspberry Pi. It should automatically resize the root file system. Okay, the Raspberry Pi will begin to boot. Raspberry Pi image, desktop, and light versions at this point will be a little different for Raspberry Pi image desktop. Of course, you'll have the desktop, and with the light version, you will not. Both will resize the SD file system automatically. At this point, you'll want to enable your SSH. We're just going to go through some of the simple settings that need to be done, and then with doing this, this will enable you to be able to remotely get into your Raspberry Pi. So from the desktop, you'll want to go under your preferences in your menu. So you'll click on what would normally be like your start on your Windows. It's going to be in your upper left-hand corner. And then you go down to preferences. And then from preferences, you will want to go down to Raspberry Pi configuration. From your Raspberry Pi configuration, you'll want to go into interfaces and enable your SSH. So we'll do that. Okay. So now we'll do the password and time zone settings. Same thing. Preferences, Raspberry Pi configuration, and so we'll go ahead and set up our time zone. Now we'll go ahead and put in our password. Okay, so so we've set up our password. We can go ahead and click OK. And from this point on, we will need to set up our router to give this Raspberry Pi a specific IP address based on this MAC address. So this part is done. Our Raspberry Pi has been set up. We just need to go through some things. You can make sure to turn on Bluetooth. Right now it looks like it's automatically turned on, so we'll just leave that on. And because this Raspberry Pi has already been, the MAC address has already been added in, it's already been assigned an IP address, but I'll show you how to go about doing that. Of course, your router may be a little bit different, but this will kind of give you a general idea of how to do that. So, on to that part.